Thank you, candidates, for joining us tonight. I'd like to first start off this County Commission candidate forum by recognizing some of the candidates in uncontested seats. A few of us here with us tonight: Commissioner Richard Schmidt, Eric Gustad, Karen Goodman, Margaret Batzer, and Nikki Coons is not here with us tonight from District 3. So I'd like, if we could, starting on our left here, if we could do brief introductions, try to keep it under 2 minutes, and then
or I'll shout. Hey, I'm Howard Gimple. I live in Chief. I want to first thank the Chamber for putting together this event. I wanted to give a shout out to the Manistee Democrats for all of their support and their encouragement in my race for the District 1 County Commission. I haven't made a secret of the fact that I am a relative newcomer to the area. I've spent my entire life at the other end of the lake in Chicago, and but that doesn't mean that for the last 40 years I haven't dreamed of moving up here. I finally had the chance, thanks to the pandemic, to work where I live instead of live where I work. So I've been married 37 years to Teresa. We raised a couple of great kids in Chicago. Now one's in Colorado. My daughter's still in Chicago. Both married. We felt at home the day we got here. And one of the reasons I'm running is the very warm, sincere embrace we got from the community. I thought I would live a very quiet life when we got here. Boy, was I wrong. Busier with more friends than I've ever had. Another reason I'm running is to bring progressive ideas to the very challenging solutions we have, or the very challenging issues we have in the community. Final reason I'm running is I had a very rewarding career, 30 years in corporate relocation real estate. And the last 12 years of that was focused on working with senior living communities and programs to assist them. And I really believe that with that I can bring a understanding of housing and real estate issues to the challenges that we face along this line.
Thank you, Mr. Gimple. And can I please ask for the folks watching at home, could the candidates in District 3 and 5 please shift your chairs a little bit this way? It looks like we're coming off screen a little bit, so I've been asked just to, perfect. Yep. Thank you for that. My apologies for the interruption. Ms. McCrainer, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
McCrainer, that's right. Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Janice McCrainer. I see a lot of familiar faces out here. My husband and I, after spending 21 years in the Air Force, moved back to Michigan, got our boys through college, we moved downstate, and in 1999 decided we were going to retire and move up north. We have since flunked retirement. We are busier now than we ever were. Within 18 months of living in Arcadia, I was elected to Township Supervisor, and in those 4 years we were able to save 10 acres of Lake Michigan frontage, and that is now our natural beach area. We created a master plan and a new zoning ordinance to go with our master plan, and we hadn't raised any taxes. Then I got on the county board, and I was county commissioner, vice chair for 4 years, and really enjoyed that. Created the regional summits with my fellow commissioners, and they're still going on today. It's a great opportunity for coming from township government to work with all the municipalities instead of these little kingdoms that we have out here, working together, communicating together, and finding solutions to a lot of ideas. I'm township supervisor right now. I have resigned my position, but I'm looking forward to being on the county board. I work for Onekama Schools as a parapro. I've worked there for 15 years, working with children that have learning disabilities or on the spectrum of autism. I also work at Camp Arcadia in the summer. I run their preschool program, so I enjoy working with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. I'm very busy. I look forward to being part of the commission, working to solve a lot of the issues that we have. And a lot of those issues that we have to deal with are just getting folks together, listening to their ideas. Common ground is the key. Once we find it, we can start it moving forward.
Hi there. My name is Megan Scott. I'm running for County Commissioner in District 3, which is Brown Township, Norman Township, Dixon Township. So I live out in Brethren. My husband and I moved here a little over 2 years ago from downtown Chicago as well. But that said, my roots here run very deep, and if you guys are in my district, you received a letter from me explaining all of those different ties to Manistee County. My great-great-grandparents immigrated here directly to Manistee from Europe and Prussia and Germany, and they're buried in Trinity Cemetery over here. Everyone bore their children here, contributed to the local economy. My great-grandpa Peterson owned the Chippewa Garment Company, which is now the Kelleson Wealth Management Building, so the building still stands. My grandpa was a pastor at Trinity Onekama, but my grandma and grandpa were the first couple to be married at Trinity Manistee because they went up through the school there and everything. So I'm kind of just getting back to my roots. I have an indulgent husband who I had a dream about our family farm in Manistee on Price Road. And I woke up and I said, we have to figure out if it's sold. We have to see if we can buy it back. Let's start a farm sanctuary. Let's start an animal sanctuary. That's a great idea. I'm an attorney, by the way. Working in downtown Chicago, we live on the 46th floor of a high-rise, okay? And I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, we have to figure out a way to move to Manistee and get my family farm. And so he's very indulgent and he said, okay, Meg. He's an animal advocate just like me. And now we decided instead of having kids, we're going to rescue all these animals. We have a rescue farm in Brethren and a bunch of little fur babies and hooved babies and such. So that's where I'm at, and I'm going to keep these remarks strictly to introductions and leave my political comments to the questions asked. Thank you.
Well, I'm Jeff Dons. I've been on the county commission for over 16 years now. My family's been here, as my father told me many times. I moved here when he was 3, so that would have been 1911. So we're in our 111th year as a family here in Manistee. I'm very proud of our Manistee heritage. Bit of an oops baby, so to speak, and I say that jokingly because my father was 53 and my mother was 43 when I was born, so I don't know what else you can say other than oops, and I thank God that they had me. I am an extremely passionate person, passionate about our county, passionate about my family. My wife is here 39 years, my youngest son, his beautiful wife, Arlene, are here. I appreciate the support. I got involved in politics. Originally, I kind of grew up as a political junkie because my father sat on the township board for decades. My brother John now holds that seat that my father vacated. And growing up in that atmosphere and all the dialogue and that went on back and forth over the years, I just became very ingrained to it. And I wanted to get in, and if you would have asked me when I first ran on my first tenure back in '94, I would have told you the reason I'm running is so our children, our grandchildren can all grow up here and we can all participate as a family. And I would tell you the exact same thing today. I don't have any agenda other than trying to improve Manistee, the entire area. That's it, period. I think I've done a good job at that. I know we're on the right track. I'm hearing comments today about incentivizing things, and we've helped to fuel that thought process because it needs to be. If we don't do that, we're going to lose those incentives, the investment that comes in here. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and looking forward to answering some questions that come. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shirley Madden, and I am a retired educator. I was a teacher, kindergarten, well not kindergarten, but elementary, math and science. I was a guidance counselor, and that was K through 12. And I also taught in some of the colleges. But I went through Wayne State, so most of my my education was through in the Detroit area. I received my bachelor's at Wayne State. I received my master's. My master's was in guidance and counseling. And my doctorate is in educational psychology. I worked, as I said, in several of the universities there in the Metro Detroit area. But it was in 1999 when my husband Gary and I decided to tour along Lake Michigan. And we were basically looking for properties and came to Manistee and thought, wow, that's a nice city. But I'll have to tell you more about the experiences that I had in Manistee. But we kept going and we went to Arcadia and Traverse, and then I thought, no, let's go back to that city, Manistee. And so we came back to Manistee and we bought a home. And that was in 1999. So over 22 years ago, we've had a home here. And this city has opened its arms to me, and I love this city. I started the Little Big Shots, and that's through the Blue Tigers, which is the outreach program of the Manistee Democrats. I started the Blue Tigers, and this is our 5th year of doing that, and that's part of the National Forest Festival. This city just opened their arms, and I even started the Martin Luther King program. There's much more I have to tell you of what I've done here in Manistee, but I do love this city.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Madden. We'll give you another opportunity to keep going on those priorities, and I want to talk about some of those successes in Manistee County that we discussed earlier. And the Chamber Economic Development Program has produced many successes and matured to the point of taking our activities to the next level. Do you support increasing funding for these contracts to hire more staff and retain talent?
Let me start. Yes, I do. And we need as many ways as we can to retain talent. Manistee has been losing their talent because people have been moving out, not being able to find housing or jobs that will give them a living wage. So we have been losing our talent. So yes, I do support those programs where we can keep our talent here and then improve on that. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Dons?
I absolutely do. I can tell you go back in time, we used to spend as a board around $97,000, $98,000 with what was once AES across from the courthouse where the planning department now rests, or I should say resides. We started out, we were at $20,000 a few years ago, and we started the EDC. In full disclosure, I'm also the chair of the EDC. We took that up to $40,000, and I think we're getting a tremendous value. As far as trying to maintain talent, we have been able and fortunate to have some talent, and I think the financing, making sure they're financially rewarded is very important. But what my biggest concern with the talent that we have is we get them frustrated because we are not willing to move the program. We stall things. We are more questioning as opposed to agreeable, and not doing it for a positive reason, doing it for a negative reason. That's probably my biggest concern. I don't want to see quality talent leave because they feel they cannot have an impact and they could get headhunted to go to other areas. We've got a great team here right now. I'm proud to be a part of that team. I do not want to lose those people. And yes, I do favor increasing economic development. I know what it's doing. I've seen it. We're actually having an impact.
Thank you both. Our next question is for Ms. Scott in District 3. The Chamber is working to address a misconception that doing business in Manistee is hard. How would you work to make doing business easier in Manistee?
Well, basically it comes down to what everyone's been echoing in this room all night long. We need the affordable housing, we need the childcare, we need one of my main goals if I'm elected is to start actively recruiting. We need more healthcare professionals, We need more veterinarians. We need more farm vets. How many people have small farms? At least maybe out where Howard and I live, in Brethren, in that area. We need to be actively recruiting recent graduates, because when I researched Manistee County, coming here as an attorney, I had a list of all the attorneys that were currently here, and most of them were retiring or passing away or just kind of getting out of the business. And I said, wow, I can open my own practice here and I can have all the business if I'm willing to work, if I'm willing to pound the pavement, if I'm willing to market our firm, our small firm. And how is that not attractive to other young professionals or professionals in general to come to our nice community? It's a beautiful place to live. How is it not attractive to be like, hey, if I come there, I can have all the business. I can have all the business I want. If I just move out there as a farm vet or as a veterinarian, I can have all the business because we're at a lack. And everyone's packed. No one's taking new clients. We need more people. We need more people out here. And to solve that problem and to get the people and to recruit the people out here, we need to solve the affordable housing issue and the child care issue.
Thank you. Our next question is for our District 1 candidates. What are your top 3 economic development priorities for the city and the county?
I would say the top 3 that we need to be very aware of and work really hard at accomplishing is making sure that it's easy to do business here. We have to do one-stop shopping. The county has done a really good thing for the municipalities, the smaller townships, to make a central place where people can call. There's office staff there, they can get the information. We have Arcadia contracts with the county now, the township, and it's one-stop shopping. They can get the information they need, what the zoning laws are, what we have available, what they need. And if we can do that for the county as a whole, it's going to impact the people who come here. Another thing that we have to work on is housing. It's so scarce. In Arcadia, if a piece of property goes for sale, and it's like this all over the county, it's gone. It becomes a bidding war. And it's really taking a toll on people who want to move here, who want to come here. Like you said, have an opportunity to do a wonderful business, and they'd be the only one doing it. But they can't find housing that is available to them. And one other thing that's really, really important that we need to protect is our waterways and our agriculture. It's got to be looked at and taken seriously.
Could you repeat the question for me?
What are your top 3 economic development priorities for the city and the county?
Thank you. For as long as I can remember, and it's probably as long as anybody can remember, the engine that drove the real estate market was first-time buyers. You have to enter the real estate market at some point, and the people who buy the more expensive houses are the ones that sold the cheaper houses to the first-time buyers. Right now, it's backwards. There's no first-time buyer properties available. Or I shouldn't say no, there were some. They got snapped up by institutional investors, rental real estate investment trusts, and of course the multi-property owning Airbnb folks who live out of state or at least out of the area. So we have it backwards in another sense. We have a lot of undeveloped or incompletely developed subdivisions that were platted for high-end properties with deed restrictions that prevent any kind of creativity or affordable housing to be erected on them. They are sitting unsold. The market has spoken. There's nobody buying those properties. They're sitting vacant. Some of them are even improved already with electricity, cable, sewer, everything else, and they sit empty. And we should be looking at finding ways to relax the deed restrictions and finding ways to attract developers into that. Sorry, that was only one priority.
Thank you.
I'll say the airport expansion is another one, and broadband. Okay.
Appreciate you keeping it brief. Thank you. And we can stick with our District 1 candidates for this next question as we move on to housing. Will you support negotiations with developers to build housing or homes that will be favorable to the completion of a project? For example, offering publicly owned parcels at reduced prices to achieve housing goals?
That's only a small part of the equation of the publicly owned properties. Of course, we need to work on making those properties or returning them to active use in the community. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again, because I got lost on the first stuff.
Will you support negotiations with developers to build housing or homes that will be favorable to the completion of the project? For example, offering publicly owned parcels at reduced prices to achieve housing goals.
And that's just one example. I understand that the Chamber is also working up a proposal for incentivizing developers to move into the area. And I'm all in favor of that. I really do like the idea of tax abatement incentives. I would like to see it's important that strings are attached. It's important, as we were discussing earlier, that there's timelines and expectations met. But there's also expectations for the quality of life of the people who are working on those projects. Are they being paid enough? Are they getting the appropriate child care? Are the employers or the developers kicking into a cooperative that can help them establish all of these things that are going to work out? But also, are we setting aside a sufficient number of these properties for people who are just entering the market and who may not be able to qualify or afford the typical price to enter the market? It's important to see set-asides. If it's 10%, 20% of the housing, be available to people who make less than the median income, perhaps.
I support anything we can do to attract housing development in Manistee County. It's going to be a huge asset as we move forward. I think we've all learned a great deal with COVID that a lot of us can work pretty much anywhere. And we're fortunate, as you stated before, to have the broadband and be able to let people move to our area, but they get here and can't afford housing. I know just in Arcadia, we have so many people. We have 2 beautiful golf courses there, Arcadia Bluffs, and they can't hire enough people to facilitate what they need to do because of lack of housing. And it's been very, very instrumental to all of us. It will be very instrumental to be able to support that economic development if we have housing that's available and that's within price ranges. And if we need to subsidize it, we need to figure out as a whole county how we're going to be able to move forward with that. I think consensus building is going to be huge because we have such gaps of places where people want to reside, but there's no housing. They buy property and they can't even build there. So we have to look at those opportunities and make sure that we have housing that's available as we grow.
Thank you. Next question for Ms. Scott. What other communities do you think have innovative approaches or ideas to tackle economic development, business growth, and housing issues?
Well, I tend to get lost in my metaphors sometimes. Blame the day job of being an attorney. But I'm going to go ahead and use a story as an illustration. I used to work in downtown Detroit for my first legal job, and I I was working in a police misconduct firm, and I got lost in downtown Detroit all the time. And I got lost one day and I stumbled upon the old train station. And every window was broken. There weren't any plans to refurbish it at the time. And I just started crying. And I said, if people don't care about their community to the point where such a beautiful structure is basically decimated at this point, I can't live here. I need to go somewhere else, and I need to move to Chicago and figure out how it works, how it functions, how a city functions, how you get people to care again. And then I'll come back to Detroit, and I'll fix everything in Detroit. I was like 20-something, okay? So pie in the sky, right? That's why I went to Chicago, and I learned that, what was the kernel of the question? What was the kernel? I got lost in my metaphor.
That happens to the best of
Sorry.
us. No, totally happens. What do you see other communities doing that are some innovative approach, or just any innovative approaches that you've seen locally, across the state, even nationally, to support economic development?
So to quickly, because my time is up, answer the kernel of the question after that long story, I learned that you need to be reliant on more than one peg of the stool, or else your stool is going to fall over. So we need more than just to rely on tourism. We need other economic bases upon which to rely, and that's what I learned living in Chicago.
Thank you. And next question for our District 5 candidates. The county land bank owns parcels or properties or could use funding to acquire blighted properties. Do you support the use of these properties to develop housing?
Absolutely. I've had several conversations with Rachel Nelson, our county treasurer, and our land bank chair as well. The county board, we allocated $500,000 of ARPA funds to them to do that. And in the process, it's one of those, as I've always liked to say, it's something that we can spend and keep reinvesting. It's not a one and done. So you can constantly keep going back to that well, because as they sell that property to develop for development or regain through a TIF of some sorts or a brownfield, that money could get reinvested time and time again. We also discussed as a board possibly adding another $500,000 to that. That decision has not been made as of yet. We will address that next year at some point in time. But absolutely, all about trying to utilize all the tools we have. The one thing I would give you a caveat to that is we have something called a land bank. We have current regulations in place that have been put there for whatever reasons, and then we have to develop another thing to try to circumvent what we put in place, as opposed to addressing the entire root of what is causing the issues. So would we be better off with a larger land bank concept as opposed to being specific and readdressing it through the regulation process, so it would make it more suitable for everyone as opposed to pick and choose here and there?
Okay, would you repeat the question?
Yes. The county land bank owns parcels or properties or could use funding to acquire blighted properties. Do you support the use of these properties to develop housing?
I do, definitely. But we have to remember what is our identification here. And I think we have become a tourist industry here in Manistee. And tourists definitely don't want to see a lot of blighted property. I lived in Detroit, grew up there, and there was a lot of blighted property. So they had to make a decision. What do we do with this property? Do we rebuild? Do we refurbish? Do we just go back? Or do we tear it down? Has it gotten to such a point where we need to tear it down? So there has to be some identification. We have become identified as a tourist industry. And to keep the tourists coming, the city has to be attractive. That means we have to get rid of the blight. And yes, if it's not to the point where you have to tear it down, then yes, let's rebuild it. And let's offer those properties to people who want to have businesses in them, people who want to move into them, or whatever. But let's and use our resources to rebuild or tear down if that's necessary, so that we can have a beautiful area where tourists would love to come back again and again.
Thank you. And Ms. Madden, we can actually stick with you. We're going to move to the topic of childcare. And this question will be for all candidates if we can work our way down. What are your ideas to help create more childcare opportunities for the people who live and work in Manistee County?
Wow, I love that question, because I love working with children. Yes, we definitely need more childcare. And one of the things that I thought about, we talk about building and having people come in to put in, new buildings and all. There can be a child care center within some of these new constructions. And therefore, if the people who are working there have their children right there in the child care center, then, at lunchtime, they can go down and visit their child. So putting a daycare center right there where new construction is going on, I think that's one of the possibilities. We also have some buildings already that we can use to have more child care centers. And I will find, I don't know all the ramifications of that, but we do have the the Generation Learning Center there at the, yes. And that's closed up. But there's a possibility of maybe having a child care or bringing in another child care, because that was a great facility there. So, yes, so that we can do that. But we definitely have to have more child care, either low cost or no cost child care. We have to have that so that the parents can, once they have jobs with the living wage, they can take their children and feel secure. But we also need to make sure that whoever's running those centers are certified to run the centers. There was, I'll stop there. There were some other things.
Okay, a lot's been said there, and there's no question we had one of the premier facilities in the Next Gen Learning Center, and we lost that. I can tell you I've had discussions with Ogama Romanelli about trying to put that back in play. I've had discussions with a lot of people, and we tend to meet on this. One of my biggest concerns with child care is it's been defined now that it has to meet this expectation. And if it doesn't meet that expectation, we're underserving our children. And we've added a tremendous amount of cost to that in that process. You only can have X amount of children being watched by X amount of people. And children are different than any of us. Maybe you could watch 8 kids. Maybe there's only 3, depending on the needs of those children and their personalities. I mean, we're all different. We're even different at that age as well. And again, it's one of those things that there's no simple solution to this. A lot of us are working on it, and it just is not an easy answer. But I can assure you we are trying to do our darndest to make an improvement for child care. I don't have a solid, good answer.
So, what I found interesting when this question was asked to the city council candidates, Mr. Zering over here said, what do we have in Manistee County more than anything else? And under everyone's breath in the audience, they said senior citizens. And he said churches. And I think that's a great idea, opening up churches if we need the facility locations. If it's more about finding workers, that's a different story. But it's true, we have a lot of senior citizens here. And I'm seeing a lot of progressive ideas coming out of the Netherlands and places like that across the pond that are combining senior care facilities with child care facilities. And it does wonders to the mental health of the senior citizens and the children there. And they're able to interact, and they have quality care providers for both the seniors and the children. And it's just mutually beneficial. Being animal-minded, I'm always thinking of senior animals for seniors, but why not combine some childcare and have some healthy interaction? And I mean, I just can't say enough about the wonders that it does in those communities where they have that available, where it's a combined system of childcare and senior care. So just picking up on what you had said earlier.
Well, childcare is definitely important. We have a wonderful facility at the school in Onekama, but we can't get enough workers. And the problem is, as we go back to what we talked about before, finding affordable housing, being able to make a living wage with some benefits. And we have facilities, but unfortunately we don't have the people qualified to work there. And a lot of child care centers, I've worked at several over the years for the Department of Defense schools, is that they'll subsidize the training. They'll get them certified so they can make $16, $17 an hour. And they can then have a living wage that affords them at least an opportunity, if the housing was available, to be able to house those workers. But until we can sit down, find common ground, and start moving forward with the separate entities that are involved in this, we're not going to make it happen. We have to do that if we're going to move forward. That conversation is a hard one to have, but we need to have it. As elected officials, it's our job to get those things done.
These were all some great answers. I wish they were mine. So I'm going to take a slightly different tack as I'm talking to the Chamber of Commerce. Human capital is the most valuable resource a business can have. It's more important than inventory. It's more important than your location. It's the people who work for you. And for that reason, and I believe there's already some initiatives in this direction, and that is a cooperative approach between business, government, and the families themselves to share the costs of childcare, so that by spreading it out, it becomes more available. It behooves the businesses, because that human capital you have is unproductive if they are on the verge of catastrophe, if they have to call in sick because their child care isn't working out, if all of these things are happening, if you have, it's important for business to take every step to make sure that their employees are loyal, motivated, and satisfied, or happy or engaged. So child care is just one aspect of that, of course, but and knowing that because of how important child care has become and how important the quality of that care has to be, the cost is naturally elevated, and that's why I think it needs to be shared across the spectrum.
Thank you, Mr. Gempel, and we can stick with you. The next question, or I should say the next category, about incentives for development. And I'd like to start again with a question for all of our candidates, starting over here. Bless you. And this is about ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act. And the coronavirus pandemic brought on a lot of challenges to our business community and our community as a whole. And along with those challenges came some federal funds to help deal with them, including the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. What would you say the best use of Manistee County's ARPA funds would be that would have the greatest impact on our community?
That's a curveball.
Well, these can be general, nothing doesn't have to be too specific.
I had mentioned it briefly in passing before, but because I was running out of time, investing in broadband for the eastern half of the county is important for the development of that, where we've got people who are fairly shut off from the economy. Expanding the airport. We've got a great little airline that runs in and out of there. They're limited in how much they can do for the community because of the size of the airport, the size of the planes they can manage there. So some expansion of the airport, and I believe some of the ARPA funds went in that direction. Attracting and retaining young talent to this city and to the county depends on all of these things, plus the improving the recreational facilities. Now we've talked about the railroad relocation beautification project and how that's going to be a boon to some of the trail access. But providing more recreational funding brings in a lot of young people, especially today, and especially in the work from home environment, because they are seeking out those areas where they can enjoy the wonderland that we live in here.
ARPA funds, everybody thought it was going to be a huge, huge windfall. And Manistee County got a nice chunk of change. And the county board has been very good at dispersing those monies. But when I look at the different municipalities that got dollars, what I think was important to do as we move forward in our township, we asked the citizens' opinion. We asked them, we have X amount of dollars to spend, what would you like to see us do with it? And believe it or not, the most important thing was the environment. They wanted dead trees that were no longer able to produce maple syrup, and they wanted the freedom of being able to have trees replanted. So we partnered with the Lions Club, and the board approved that we would cut down all the dead trees and repurpose them with beautiful new trees, mature trees. And I think that the input that we got from our citizens made a difference as to how we move forward. There were a lot of things that were talked about, but the environment and the trees were our two biggest things. And I think that's what we have to do is, it's going to be important to protect our environment as we move forward.
To pick up on what my predecessors have said, I agree entirely with what both of them have said, especially living out in Brethren, especially living out, you guys live out in Chief or around there, really right next door to me. The broadband issue is important, and it's important for getting people to come out to what is disrespectfully known as the out counties. And until I hear another term for it, I guess that's what I have to call us. But yeah, we need broadband out there because that's the only way professionals working from home since COVID can do anything. That's the only way I can continue to work for my law firm in Chicago and run my own law firm as well from my house where I can spend time with all my animal babies, right? We all need broadband, especially out there. And hopefully some of the ARPA funds are going towards that. I also, speaking from District 3, Tippy Dam has come up, and no one's kind of talked about that yet tonight, but it tags along with the environmental concerns. Tippy Dam, if we lose Tippy Dam, especially out where we live, that's all our tourism. People come out here for some of the best fishing, definitely in the state, if not further. And if we lose Tippy Dam, not only is there 20,000 endangered Indiana brown bats that have their home there, we lose all our tourism. That's the bait and tackle shop I spoke to the other day. That's every small town, Brethren, Chief, etc. So that's a priority, at least for me, at least for us.
Well, it's a hypothetical question because we've received about a little less than 4.8 million. We had a wish list of county properties that's basically $2.5 million. Well, as I like to say, you got to make hay when the sun shines. So we had that ability to do that, so we did that. We thought it was the fiscal responsibility to do it. The remainder, many counties across the state took those dollars and they allocated them to their general funds. Now, we, after taking care of the county needs, decided we'd open it up to some of the nonprofits and other agencies and see what they may need. I don't want to say it's small ball because it's one of those things to where some of the people that get $20,000 or something allocated along those lines, that's a major reimbursement for them to help their causes. So we've done a lot of good things sprinkling it around. We've got a little less than $1 million left of ARPA funds to distribute, and we haven't decided on what we're going to do with those things as of yet. Our goal is to have another round of allocation next year, but again, that's fluid. I mean, everything's fluid. It's not static, it's dynamic. You mentioned Tippy Dam. as opposed to just mingling, talking about getting some letters, I had a conversation this evening about getting some letters going in regard to that. It's important, it's extremely important. I think that's something we're going to be wrestling with for a few years, if not several years. It's definitely a point of concern, and definitely have it on my radar, and hopefully I have some of the right connections to help make it work.
Thank you. One of the issues with that ARPA fund was for broadband. And, we had talked and talked and talked about having broadband all the way, through the rural areas, etc. Let's do it. Yep. We can't keep talking. Talking is cheap. Funds have been given to the state to have broadband put into these areas. Let's do it. That's what we're in these offices, that's what we're in these positions for. To do these things that our communities need, and that we definitely need broadband. And as Megan mentioned, we need them for our jobs. Many of these young people who we want to stay in our community need broadband so that they can have their jobs. If we don't have that and they come here looking, they're not going to stay here. And we do know that our young people is what is going to keep this community viable. So we have to stop talking. We know the money was sent. We have to do it.
Thank you, and since you're all on a roll, this is also for all of the candidates. And we can stick with Miss Matt. Going back to. What's that? Oh, I'm going off script. I have to worry about that later. I'll stay on script, Stacey, I promise. I forget she's watching me back there. It was in my own world. This question is again about incentives for development. Manistee County has many historic buildings that have deferred maintenance or need major upgrades to bring a building back to use. Do you support the creation and approval of incentives to support redevelopment and creation of economic opportunities?
Yes. Yes, I do. I support that. I think it's a great idea if we can keep some of our historic buildings. I have traveled to many countries of the world, and it's just great, like when you go to Europe and you see how they maintain their historic buildings. Manistee has a lot of buildings that, back in the days of the barons and the logs and when they were logging, those buildings are great. I'm also part of the Lakeside Club, where we have our home tours every other year. And so people come in from all around, not just Manistee, to see these homes that were built. So I believe we should keep it as best we can, the buildings that are historical, and keep that. But if it's to the point where it can't be renovated or it's just in such poor condition, I understand the need to have those either torn down, etc. But I think it would be best if we could use some of the funds that we have to help restore those buildings and bring them back to useful conditions.
Absolutely. The most popular example, DDA took city council around here recently. They went over to a couple different buildings. The one example I like to use is the old Hotel Northern. That was bought with the idea that you could put about $2 million into that and have the desired outcome that their dream is for that building. In the process of that, the bids come back, as it has with medical care, probably will with MAPS, much higher than what they anticipated. It's over $4 million right now for the Hotel Northern. It's an old building, it's a historic building. I can tell you, I remember going there as a youth. that's a whole nother story. But having said that, if you don't incentivize it, and I go to meetings all the time and I preach from the pulpit, we need to embrace incentivizing. Investment follows the path of least resistance. And unless we've got so much buzz going here that an investor needs to come to play ball as they want to be part of it, it's just going to go someplace else. So there's no question. We need to embrace incentivizing, and that's one of the things I think it's helped stagnated this county for decades, since we went through the 70s and 80s when we lost so much of household jobs on Manistee Lake. We have not embraced that, and we need to. And I know we're starting to. I'm hearing it continuously from the people sitting in these chairs this evening, and I find it extremely good and positive.
I feel like that's kind of a gimme question, right? Like, of course you know, look around. Just even look out these windows behind you. Like, this is what makes Manistee such a cool place. You know, like, didn't Manistee County just win some kind of award because it's the oldest fully functioning fire department building? Didn't we just win an award for that? Like, that's part of it. That's part of what makes this place such a cool place. And like, when I started researching to come here and move here, like I said, I was wondering, you know, where did my great-grandpa Peterson have the Chippewa Garment Company? Is that building still standing? It is. It is. It's the Colasson Wealth Management Building. I love that Century 21 building that is made out of a house with the turrets and it's painted dark. And I mean, like, just look around. It's the coolest place to live because we put the funds into refurbishing our historical buildings. You can drive around and take pictures of the Ironworks building. Any of these buildings, they're awesome. I would, if I ever, God forbid, have to set up a brick and mortar for my law practice, I've been looking at that state police building that's for sale, that's been for sale since I moved here. I love it. It's a great building. It's got a garage on it. I mean, who wouldn't want to preserve that? That's awesome. So, 100%. And yeah, it's kind of a gimme question.
It's definitely a gimme.
I turned you off, sorry.
It's definitely a gimme question. There's so many beautiful, beautiful buildings. There's so much opportunity for us to restore things. We need to support that 100%. And I think as we talk to other community members and talk with other organizations, the buy-in will come. The importance is understood. We don't want to lose what we have, and we need to refurbish and make it accessible so that people can use it, see it, and love it. I left it on.
Thank you. I like this
I
question.
didn't want to turn it off.
You know, County Inn is a fan of beautiful old buildings that need refurbishing. And here's the thing, if we're talking about incentives, I'm sorry, I said here's the thing, it's not the only thing. If we're talking about incentives, we're also talking about, this is not a DIY kind of project. Refurbishing these old buildings takes a special skill set, takes a special contractor. And if we're going to incentivize them to come to the community and restore an old building and bring it to a useful state, then I think it's important to ask them as a string attached to that incentive to find another building in the county that needs to be refurbished. Every little town, or what used to be a town throughout the county, Chief, Nissen City, Norwalk, even Kokomish, Thompsonville. Thompsonville's not in the county. But to take the old general store, that you've seen them all. They're sitting on the corner, and they're vacant, and I'm sure they could be of use. And we can attract that use and attract commerce to the out of county with these incentives. Because again, you're talking about a specialized contractor, and that's kind of a gimme for them. They already have the workforce here. If they're bringing in the people to do the work, send them a few minutes up the road to keep doing the work.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the optimism. I would like to bring this group down to Lansing with me sometime and relay that news. But I do want to be conscious of everyone's time. We do have time for one quick question from the audience, if anyone has one. Yes, sir.
So the whole program depends on money. And the 700-pound,
Hello. The 700-pound gorilla in the room is, are we going to get reparations from China for the COVID?
You all said I was taking it easy on you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, you know, I don't know if we have any economic development questions from anyone in the room, but we are doing our best to stick to business issues. You guys basically asked for
Let me address that.
Basically.
I'm going to address that for you because this is something that comes up. And I'm not talking about that in Mr. Melky's question. But I can tell you, as chair of the county commission, I keep us out of national, international stuff. We keep it local because we want to maintain that rapport amongst the commissioners. And we get locked in some of these fights because that's what they become. And I do not want to see the county commission become as dysfunctional as they are in Lansing and or Washington, D.C. So I will answer your question that way, Dave.
Well, and if you could just take, even just candidates want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement, we can maybe work our way down the line from Mr. Gimple.
Thanks. And along to echo what Jeff was saying, when I'm asked, you know, I've gone to people's houses, knocked on their doors, talked to them, and wherever they are, there's always one who asks, "What does the county commission do?" And I like to say, we do everybody's favorite thing. We tax and spend. But in the end, it's not a political position. We're not here to, we're not advancing the tribalism that we got in those homes. I wanted to tell one quick story about broadband, though, because it plays into what everybody was saying. That is my next door neighbor, who moved in shortly after I
I'm so sorry, Mr. Gimple. We do want to.
He's an IT guy, and he can't get broadband in his house. He can't work.
Thank you for summing that up.
I would just like to thank everyone for taking the time to be out here this evening. We really enjoyed, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I really enjoyed being able to see all the smiling faces and being asked questions. I think it's important. I think what's the most important thing we can do for ourselves, and I want to reiterate what Jeff said, is our county board needs to stay non-political. We don't need to fight about things. There are so many areas that we can find common ground and move forward. So thank you for your time this evening.
What they said, and also, yeah, I mean, I think we all just want to move Manistee County forward, right? Everyone in the room. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be here, right? Because you had the option to stay home. It's not as bad weather as it was the past 2 nights, but still, it takes a lot to put on your pants and come out the door sometimes, right? So thank you guys for caring about your community. I think all of us care about it too, and that's why we're running. At least that's why I'm running. We care about the community. We want to move it forward with you, hear your concerns, and react from there.
I will answer in some context of what I already have mentioned earlier, and that is, I remember what Manistee looked like when I was a young child, in the 60s, late 60s, and in the 70s. And the difference between then and today is enormous. The amount of bars, restaurants. We had a Woolworths, we had a Ben Franklin, we had a Montgomery Ward's, we had a Sears, we had a Penny's, we had everything, absolutely everything. And then the late 70s and 80s hit, and it was devastating. We didn't pivot well at all. We're starting to pivot. And with that, I have the passion to keep doing what I'm doing. Anybody who knows me knows the grass doesn't grow underneath my feet, and I'm not stagnant.
Thank you, and I do want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. And I want you to look at that word, community. And the basic meaning means with unity. And I don't believe that the county commissioner is a position, a political position. It's a position where we can work together with unity to make sure that things are done for this community. And I love this community, and that's why I'm running. I want to present some new ideas, a new voice for this community.
Thank you, candidates. And before Stacy Bitework closes us out, I think we should give a round of applause to the staff here at the Manistee Chamber for the bell ringing was top notch. You were not. Go ahead, Stacy.
I just want to thank everybody that came out tonight and everyone running for office. We appreciate you all doing this because it's not an easy task, and we do feel today, hearing from every one of you, how you are invested in this community. And as a Chamber of Commerce and representing businesses, that's what we want for our candidates. So thank you all. And then I want to thank our sponsor, Nubu. So if you didn't have a slice of pizza, go ahead and grab that. And again, thank you, Henry. You did a great job. If you saw us giggling, I was just kind of messing with him a little bit. We have fun. Got to be a little fun here. And then Carmen, nice job. And then thanks to my team too. It's more work than you think putting one of these together. So thank you everybody for coming out, and we greatly appreciate it. So go out and vote. Thank you.